Welcome back to Factorio, everybody. It's now episode 43, and starting off, I'm over here at the module build, which is not looking so great, and to be honest, it's been a bit neglected and hasn't been looking good for quite some time. For the most part, the red circuits are the biggest problem, and they just kind of barely trickle in. My cars don't do a very good job of supplying it because my supply is not keeping up with the demand. I have one little red circuit build over here, which was okay for the early mid-game, but certainly not okay for the demand of modules, which is the primary area where red circuits are going right now. So for today's episode, I'm thinking we're going to give the main base area, including modules, a little bit of a makeover, with the goal in mind to hopefully improve module production by the end of the episode. So part of the reason why modules in the main base area in particular have gone neglected for way too long was in part, and actually probably the biggest reason, because I just had procrastinated oil for way too long. But now that we did that in last episode, I think we have a couple pieces in which to kind of just pull from inspiration, or at least take like smaller versions of the oil blueprints and even blueprints that we've done for red circuits, green circuits, and blue circuits, and incorporate it into smaller versions of the main base area, where I pretty much have my supply depot or make everything mall, whatever you want to call it, factory here in the very middle, and then the module factory here. But apart from basically the supply depot and the modules, really I'm planning on keeping the resources in this circle here pretty much within this circle. I really don't anticipate them having to travel outside of the circle too much. And then, in fact, for low density structures, I plan on just demolishing this entirely, because we're going to have a completely separate low density structure build for the stuff that's going to be going into the satellite, and then, of course, into the rocket part section itself, so we can get rid of that. I do know that low density structures are kind of used in some of these like armory pieces around here, but I'm figuring we can maybe have like literally just one assembler somewhere that can do it very slowly over time, but I would think that should be enough to keep up with the very rare demand of these items at this point. So that's what I'm tentatively planning. Which means really, if we're going to make over the components that go into modules, we're going to have to get rid of this stuff first and basically go into a deconstruction phase, and that will include green circuits over here. I anticipate that we're going to end up moving stuff around just a touch. In fact, I think once this is demolished, we'll actually put another nuclear build in this area here, and maybe put in the other circuits that are going to be going as replacements for these factories in this quadrant over here. Exactly where I will put the oil refineries, I'm not 100% sure yet, but I think we'll have enough room between like little spaces around here and then whatever room is left over after circuits are done in this quadrant over here. Plus we even still have room next to the nuclear build, so we have some options. But that means first things first, we're going to rip this stuff up. Now the bots are just picking up the last couple pieces of things, but they were actually able to get this cleared pretty quickly. So while they finish up, I think we're going to go ahead and now plop down a new version of the nuclear reactor to go in this area. And then while that's building, we'll delete the current one over here. And then from then on out, we'll have a blank slate in which to play with this for putting in the new factories with some sort of oil and circuit configuration that will hopefully be using to supply products into the module build, and then basically the supply depot. And just like that, the bots have cleared out the lower right-hand quadrant, and they've placed the nuclear reactor build from this section back up to the left upper quadrant over here. So I have tons of room, hopefully, in which to play with, because I have lots of stuff to cram in this one space, although I think I'm going to have to use part of this quadrant as well. So I think to help get me a little bit more room, we'll end up moving this current module factory, which is right here, kind of more in this upper direction, just slightly up a little bit, and we'll kind of change the orientation a little bit and flip it so that way the inputs for the belts are coming kind of across and down from this direction instead of having the belts take up so much room from going up and over from this direction. So hopefully that will help save me a little bit of room, because looking where I'm standing, hopefully you can see these ghosted down blueprints, but I have a lot to fit in just those two quadrants. So what I've done here, apart from the obvious that there's some ghosted down blueprints, is I've kind of taken smaller versions of my kind of mother factories, so like the big blueprints of plastic or oil or green, red, and blue circuits. I've taken smaller tiles of those and made it into a version that will actually support up to 12 per minute of one type of module at a time. And the reason why I came up with 12 per minute is because this module factory that I have built can technically support up to speed 3, productivity 3, or efficiency 3 modules at 12 per minute, as long as I have basically 100% of the inputs coming in 100% of the time. Now, I probably can't support all 3 separate modules at 12 per minute at the same time as the other modules, unless I had far more inputs coming in. But I think with just this amount, aiming for just one type of module at 12 per minute is a decent enough and difficult enough goal. Because let's actually take a look back at the calculator. I know we spent so much time looking at it last time, but it's important. And really, I put in the items per minute for just any of the modules is fine. So I just picked speed 3 because that seems to be what I'm out of at the most right now. So at 12 per minute, it gave me the results for kind of the rates and goals of productivity that I need to meet that goal. So things I kept in mind was I needed to aim for a goal of 360 blue circuits per minute, over 2,000 red circuits per minute, about 9,300 green circuits per minute, 2,900 plastic per minute, and then a petroleum rate of about almost 24,000 per minute. So those were some of the big players that I kept in mind. And then I went into creative mode. I started to play with, again, the tiles of these versions. So like I took a tile of green circuits and I put it down to see how much I could put together to come up with the rates I needed, and so on, and basically duplicated that with all of the other products that we have working with. So one thing I will mention is that I'm going to be using a couple different versions of some sort of products. So like this section here is a 2x2 green circuit build, and this will solely be feeding into the red circuit build over here. Meanwhile, this green circuit tile right here is actually all I need to support the module build. So this will just go straight into modules. So instead of incorporating this into this bigger build and making it basically 5 tiles, I'm separating it, because I really have to be careful with how much room and the width and like length and basically overall surface area of my blueprints in these quadrants, which are very odd shaped. But B, that way I can know exactly where my products are going and basically try to have certain products already allocated to their counterparts instead of having to divvy it up later. So that's kind of the reasoning behind some of this madness here. But you'll see this is what we needed for red circuits to keep up with the desired rate. This is what we need for blue circuits, which is actually almost as big as our current tile up here. The only difference is I was able to cut it off by 1 column. So I'm ending up using 12 blue circuit factories, whereas our main blue circuit factory up here takes 16. Yeah, 16. So that's the difference between this one and our main build. Oil and plastic and acid though, I'm again going to be using basic oil processing to support my petroleum production. I suppose in the future I could maybe consider doing advanced oil processing or even coal liquefaction if I can come up with enough room to place down the chemical plants that would be going into cracking. But for now, this is kind of like the easiest way in my mind to get a good production of petroleum without having to worry about mixing the fluids and having not enough room to put in extra, chemical plants and such like that. So this section over here is going to be basically the entire refinery section I need to support blue science for plastic and acid. So that's basically what this section over here is going to be doing. Whereas these refineries and this plastic area with the 3 tiles of plastic will be going straight as well into red circuits. Another thing if I want to do, if I have room left over, hopefully, is to plop down maybe just 1 chemical plant for lube, which we could use with coal liquefaction to keep up with the heavy oil that goes into lube or something like that. But that way, basically, this circle here will be entirely self-sufficient, and I really shouldn't have to pull from any outside resources around the outside circles, at least as far as I'm thinking. There might be like an item or 2 that I'm not thinking about that you guys can let me know I'm not keeping in mind. But for now, that's kind of what I'm tentatively hoping for. So that's a whole lot of talking like normal. With that said, I've got to figure out a way to get all of these ghosted down blueprints into some sort of Tetris fashion within these 2 quadrants here. To give myself a little bit more room to play with, though, I'm going to first go back into deconstruction mode. We're going to move the module factory right off the bat, and that way I have even more room to play with. And then we'll start playing and putting some stuff down. Well, the module factory is down now, and I even installed the 1 little tile of green circuits that are going to be hopefully feeding this properly. It only takes the 1 tile theoretically to keep up with the green circuit demand. Basically, even between these 2 rows, they get kind of divvied up between the 3 columns here. And I've even hooked up the outputs of the iron plate and copper plate coming from the cars and then feeding into the green circuit tile here. So that's already done and off my to-do list. But that still leaves so much to do. We still have to install everything else. So now let's commence a sped up version of the Tetris phase. After quite a long time, the Tetris portion is finally complete, and I'm actually really thrilled with how it turned out. And it was actually even a little bit easier than I expected. I was able to fit in everything fairly well. The left quadrant was certainly a lot harder than the right because I ended up fitting more in the left side. So let's take a look at the left-hand side first. And this is where I ended up moving red circuit factory components. So I've got, of course, the module factory, which is kind of where it started in the previous cut, along with the one green circuit tile still. But next to that, we have the plastic build. Those will feed into the red circuit factory here. And then adjacent to that are the refineries converting the crude oil into petroleum. The petroleum feeds through these pipes into the plastic chemical plants over here. And then kind of spread out throughout the circle, I have pauses in the belt lines for pulling materials off of the cars. Hopefully it'll distribute okay. I tried to balance it, and there were some places that were balanced a lot better than others. So really the best way to see how effective this is once we actually get it turned on. But we have areas here kind of at the beginning for copper plate and green circuits. Those will feed into the red circuit factory over here. Plastic we've got covered because it's coming directly from the top here. The outputs for the red circuits are going through these underground belts, snaking all the way through the top and then going directly into the module build, although at some point we'll want to pull a couple red circuits off of here and back into the main circle bus, so that way when the module factory isn't working, or theoretically even when it is working, we can have cars pick up the red circuits and take it into the supply depot. As far as the right-hand quadrant, this is essentially where I put blue circuit components, and I'm glad I only stuck with blue circuit components into this quadrant because blue circuits took up a ton of space and a ton of belts to feed into and out of, as you can see here with this spaghetti going on. But essentially we have the blue circuit factory right here taking up the bulk of the area. Lots of belts, like I mentioned. This is for feeding off the iron plate and the copper plate that will go into each lane. This belt section over here is going to be a mess between coal coming into the plastic and then the plastic coming out and feeding down the columns into the blue circuits. We've got another set of refineries, and I was actually able to compress my oil build even further into this setup here where I have the refineries in the middle, surrounded by the acid section on the left-hand side and the plastic on the right. So I really like how efficient and compact this is. This belt line here is for the iron plate that'll be feeding into the acid chemical plant over here. I did put in some water fill using the water fill mod for this supply over here. And you'll notice that I've actually piped in oil all the way actually from the top over here, but eventually it would be nice to get in like a train or something like that, a little bit more efficient. We could technically even barrel it if I wanted to, although that would take up a lot of room in the trunks of the cars because it only stacks in, I think, stacks of 10. But regardless, we have options for getting the crude oil here a lot more efficiently than I currently have it set up, but this is more because I just want to like turn it on and see it started. And then right below that, we have green circuits. Now, these are actually mostly going to be getting fed back into the red circuit build over here. But first, they have to get delivered back into the cargo of the trunk there. They'll continue along the circle and then make their pit stop here. Unfortunately, I couldn't do any better direct insertion than that because it's already so compact as it is, but it's a pretty short jog, so hopefully that doesn't cause any problems with that. But I think that is essentially everything that's been installed, so I hope I'm not forgetting anything. The last thing we really have to do is turn it on, which we can do once we fix the traffic jam. And the reason why we had the traffic jam is because as I started to install these factories with all of the beacons involved, my power started to kind of decline, especially because over here at my Steam, I was losing coal. So not only did I install the factories, but I fixed my temporary power problem. So hopefully we have enough power to actually see this up and running for a little bit. But with that said, let's turn everything on. Okay, this is attempt number 1. Hopefully it goes well. I will be really disappointed after about these 2 hours of work if it's all for nothing. All right, there the cars go. They should kind of correct themselves once this initial hang-up gets resolved. But you can see it's working already. Now imagine if we only had more cars in the system. This is good so far. Hey, and it's even balancing properly. That is amazing. It's even turning on, you guys. Wow, that happened a lot quicker than I expected. We've got green circuits working. Red circuits won't be working yet because we're waiting on plastic, which won't get turned on until the cars make it all the way down here to deliver the coal. But at least part of the blue circuit build is working so far. We're going to follow these cars to make sure that they get to the rest of the way through and get their products delivered properly. All right, the first car made it to the coal drop-off area. Again, balancing perfectly. All the inserters are pulling from it properly. Oh gosh, this is amazing. Plastic turning on. And plastic is, I'm sure, a lot slower than what it's going to be once all of the modules are installed. So that's going to be a little bit of an issue until the modules get placed, but at least it's technically working. Green circuits are working. Oh my gosh, they're even filling into the cars, or at least they will be once the cars would run out of the green circuits in their inventory. Oh my gosh, this is working, you guys. For some reason, I felt like something ought to go wrong. Whew. Oh, no. Okay. Well, I spoke too soon. Here's the thing that went wrong. Crap. We got a traffic jam. So I'll have to fix where I put my pauses, it looks like, in the belt line, or do some of those ugly, like, belt correction things, like this here. Oh, gosh. Dealing with cars, not the funnest thing in the world. Hopefully they can get on track right here. We'll have those be for a second. Let's take a look back at this section over here. Okay, copper's working. Green circuits are working. Red circuits are not working yet because we're still waiting on plastic. Plastic's working. Plastic is working. How come it's not working all that great though? Oh, because we're low on coal, which coal gets delivered through here. So that explains it. Not all of the cars have equal amounts of products. So like this car as an example only had 4 slots worth of coal. So we'll have to redistribute some of the things in the car's trunk at some point, but that can be, you know, later down the road. At this point, it's more of just an experiment to see if this concept even works, which it does so far. Green circuits getting delivered. This section here might be a little bit overkill. I didn't have quite a lot of room to balance it properly. Like, this is a really nice belt balancer because it can just go essentially, you know, half on each side of the lane. This, not so much. So we can maybe play with that later, but you guys, it is working. I am thrilled. Oh my gosh, we even have blue circuits coming in. That's the first bit of blue circuits. Now the last thing we're really waiting on are the red circuits. Which, the problem with the red circuits, is it really just coal related? I think it might be. Okay, well, let me fix and play with the cars a little bit. Let me, first of all, get them back on the correct track. And then I'll probably add a couple more cars into the system that will be delivering probably a couple more products needed for red circuits. So a better distribution of those things like the copper and coal and stuff like that. But this is already super promising and working much better than I honestly expected it to. So give me a second. I'll see you guys in just a minute once I've tweaked a couple of things. Well, after a decent amount of tweaking, I've at least fixed it so that the cars are no longer getting jammed. And all of the cars now have made several rotations, I would think, without having any issues. And they're able to deliver the products fairly well throughout all of the areas where they have little pit stops along the way. Some of these things can still definitely be improved upon though, so those are things that I plan on doing off camera. but I'm largely kind of where I was at the beginning of the episode, where, if you remember, I was starved for red circuits, and that's still really the case right now. And really, the reason why I'm lagging so far behind in red circuits, I think, is a plastic problem. And the plastic problem is related to petroleum. And I want to say the petroleum not keeping up is more of an issue related to just not being fast enough. So none of these refinery areas have any of the Speed 3 modules that will be going into, I think it's like 14 beacons around them. So I imagine once we start getting more modules in them, this will kind of auto-correct itself. But we'll see. I mean, only time will tell. I essentially just have to let this run, and hopefully things will start to improve and we can get exponentially a little bit better module function and production as time goes on and as the factory becomes more complete. But I think for now, we're going to end up calling this an episode. It's already been really successful as it is. I just have to kind of play the waiting game at this point and see how it runs over a longer period of time. As far as next episode goes, I still have big plans and tons of things I want to do. Assuming I can get the modules placed before then, I imagine we'll be working on more factory projects in the main base area over here, like possibly initiating an area for batteries or for coal liquefaction perhaps, or maybe even some light oil into some solid fuel that can eventually go into rocket fuel, because we still don't even have rocket fuel yet in this map at all. We're still running off of coal in the entire train base section. So those are things we can work on. And other things we can do that I'm really looking forward to is actually demolishing now this really old, outdated oil setup, and we can now place in another blue circuit build that will be going in this area over here. We can add in the other oil parts that will be going attached to the blue circuit build. So long story short, there's tons still to do, so I hope you guys will continue to stick around for those projects in the future. But as for now, this is Poober signing off. I'll see you guys next time.